Hello there, sword friends. I have a quick update on, well, no real quick updates, frankly. I can update you in the sense that I'm editing other videos. It's taking way more time than I expected it to, so I'll have some reviews and other maybe more interesting, helpful material later on. But in the interim, I have some new acquisitions that I can share with you. I have four pieces that I can talk a little bit about that I got over the summer, some more recently than others. And then I can chat a little bit more about some channel related stuff. So, anyway, for the fun part, I thought I would share some pieces that I got. First off, let's try not to knock it over. This right here is an angel sword. It's an angel sword buccaneer blade, I believe. And I'll probably do a review on this thing a little bit later. And here's just some stuff so you can see. It has a very rudimentary polish, but for an angel sword, this might not look like anything in particular to you. I can't blame you for that. But the fittings are actually reasonably well done for an angel sword. Angel sword isn't terribly well known for getting things really close to the mark in a traditional style. This is, well, several degrees off of perfect, still closer in terms of a traditional fit than many of them come. Now, what I'll say is that this thing retails for $8,000, and and that's a lot of money based on what you're seeing here. I mean, there's some really bulky transitions. There's some artwork on the saya that, if you look at it close, is certainly not as refined as some other kind of Japanese artwork is. And then you have the tsuba, which kind of looks like some kind of cast reproduction stuff out of China. But anyway, supposedly these are cast out of, similar to antique casts, and the sayas are all handmade, and this is kind of one of their pieces that's more geared toward a practitioner. And I can say it, personally, I find it a bit lacking in aesthetics at first glance, especially if you've seen some of the other pieces that I've got in my collection or that I've had go through my hands over the years. The attention to detail here seems a little bit missed. There's some things that are good, but most of them, well, frankly, are not. This is kind of what I see in much less expensive swords. But what I can say about it is that it feels really good in the hands. It actually is a very nimble, lively little piece, and it is the sharpest sword that I think I've ever gotten from anyone. And I can do a little bit of demonstrating later. My office isn't quite clean enough to attempt that at the moment, plus, computer gamer over there. Anyway, this is an angel sword. Like I said, I'll do a review on it, but the price tag on that thing is $8,000. And so when you see something like that, you're kind of wondering, well, what really makes it worth it? Well, there's a reasonable argument to be had on either camp of yay or nay. Obviously, I have it, so I'm in a particular camp, but at the same time, there are some properties about the sword in terms of how it feels and whatnot that I do find very appealing. The second piece I have for you is another angel sword. This is an Avatar, one of their kind of higher end, or the arguably, I think it's their highest end type things, but this is $10,000 in terms of the retail price on it. And when you look at it, you're like, well, what's $10,000? The sai is a kind of a hardwood. It's made in three pieces. The fittings, if you notice the tsuba even on it, is, if it's a cast, you can maybe catch it here in the light, is bent a little bit. like you rolled off the shelf and dropped or something. Maybe that's how the original, if this is cast from an original artwork, I'm not sure. And then there are some picture of samurais. This is supposed to be called the Storm of War, is the kind of name of said sword. Supposedly Daniel Watson, the smith at Angel Sword, doesn't often name swords, but that's what he said, the name he gave this one. In terms of kind of its overall look, here's the hibachi. And the hibachi right here gives it the kind of appearance that this kisaki area, the tip, is larger than the munmachi, hamachi, kind of near the hibachi area, and it's not. It's actually a little smaller. Just kind of a weird optical illusion that happens with the sword. But again, a very nimble sword. I haven't done any cutting with this one. It has a kind of a neat folding pattern in it. And I may do another review on this one as well later on, at least if you're interested in seeing it. I'm not going to break it, so if you're asking me, break the $10,000 sword, not going to do that. But I got those 2 angel sword pieces. I don't know if you keep an eye on my eBay page and whatnot, but I had this just pile of angel sword knives. And frankly, I wasn't quite sure. It was a lot of time to sell them, and they weren't moving very quickly, so I brought a bunch of stuff into angel sword to trade in, and I walked away with 2 swords instead of 3 swords and like 35 knives. So it was, but it's less for me to deal with, and I have a couple swords that I can review. And let me know which ones you find more interesting, or which one you would be more interested in seeing. Personally, I think the red one, the L6 blade, is a little bit finer feeling in my hand, so I'm looking a little bit more forward to reviewing that one. But if you have a preference, let me know. And then speaking of L6, I have this other little project blade that I got. And you might say, what is this? This is a Howard Clark L6 Zatoichi wakizashi. It's I believe about 23 3/4 inches long, at least if you're measuring from the tip to the munmachi area, though I guess I really haven't measured it, so maybe I could before I talk. But it's less than 24 inches, so it's a wakizashi, just a really larger size wakizashi. The kisaki almost looks like it drops down in terms of the tip just a little bit. But this is a project, when I bought it, I honestly had no idea that it was this thin. I mean, it's the width of the blade is very, very small in comparison to a katana, which I have so many of them around. I don't want to hold one up. But anyway, this is much, much smaller in terms of, it's about the same thickness as a katana, but it's much thinner. It's got a hibachi on it. It's got, maybe you can make out there's Howard's signature on the blade. And this is, I'm debating what I'm going to do with it. I mean, part of me thinks that the little thin blade, I could make a ninjato or something akin to like a ninja sword, given the shape, the straight shape, the shinogi zakuri type look. But it's so thin that I'm really tempted to just straight up do a zatoichi kind of stick sword, which is really plain. But I think that might just be what the sword needs to have done to it. I think that might be just a little bit... might be the coolest thing I can do with this. The downside is I bought this sword and I didn't know how big it was, and despite how many custom swords you see me make, I still make so many mistakes as a collector, as a guy that finishes them, as a person that tries to sell them. I make a lot of mistakes doing this, and one of them was buying this. I don't know if it's a mistake yet, but this is a really thin little sword. I'm not that terribly into zatoichi. I've never longed to have one of the sword cane style sticks, but I think that's what I should do with this one. Let me know if you have some other ideas. Throw it in the comments below or something like that. But I have no idea if it's going to sell when I'm done with it. I mean, I'm into this a chunk. It's going to cost me probably another, $800 or $1,000 to have polished, and then I have to have it mounted up into a stick, which is probably going to cost me like another $1,000. So, I mean, was somebody going to pay $5,000 for a zatoichi stick? Because I'm going to be into it so much money that's what I'll have to get out of it to make enough to buy a lunch at McDonald's. And I don't know if that's worth the investment or not. Anyway, if you have some thoughts, let me know. I'm wondering if I made a blunder on this one, but I guess time will tell. And then the last one that I have to show you is maybe the one I'm the most excited for. And before I do, scotch. Okay. And yes, neat room temperature scotch. That's my beverage of choice. Okay, so what is this? This is a Prism Ik Katana. Now, some time ago, I made a video about a wakizashi by Prism Ik, and before that, I made a video about some swords that I had Prism Ik do or have done. Anyway, I've made some videos. He's a big dude that is a swordsmith in Poland, and I eventually ended up selling the Prism Ik wakizashi, and I used the money that I got from that to buy a Prism Ik katana, and yeah, that's pretty much it. I don't really have any plans or necessity, but this is about my size. and he sold this sword for, I think he was running like a special on SFI for like $900 or something. So keep in mind that like for $1,000 or under, you could have had this. Okay, and what is this? Well, one, we have Shirasaya, admittedly rough. It's not like buffed or anything like that. There are some spots that make it, you know, slightly less than perfect. Okay, and it is a rough texture, and you can make out some file marks for sure. The seam is pretty good, certainly closer than I could get it, but it is not 100% perfect. And the ska area is refined a little bit. He has like a little bit of a taper in here for, you know, to hold on to. But anyway, basically I would describe this as usable to make a new sword project. So if I want to use this as the base of a saya, it's extremely thick. I mean, it's got a lot of meat left on it, and I believe there's enough left in there to be used as the basis for the Suka, but I'm not sure if I can use this as a Suka core if it's long enough based on the blade, but I guess time will tell. So here is the sword. Well, I guess here we got the, just so you can see, like this almost reminds me of the Chris Cutlery TFW katana. Is just a really wide profile there, but that's good because if you want to use it as the basis to do a sword project, you can paint it whatever color you want, you can refine it in shape, you can make it fit just about any kind of fitting. There's enough meat left on the bone to do a lot. The only concern I have is that the Nakago or the Suka handle might be a little bit short for it, but then again, I kind of like it that way. Anyway, here's the Hibachi. It's a little bit rough. You can see that there's something of a seam here, but it has some nice file marks on it. It's this is not meant to be like a finished piece, but you know, it's pretty well done. It has a little wiggle to it, but again, this is not the finished bit. This is a Shirasaya, so I'm not holding that against him. It has the ability to get on there tight. And go here, maybe you can see some stuff. Now, what I'm looking at here is, and maybe what you can see, is just some of the lines in the sword. They're not, I'm not going to say 100% perfect, all right? But overall, I mean, this sword is polished, which, if I mention the price, you should probably be surprised about as well. Let me turn this light on and maybe the hamon will come out a little bit. Or maybe not, maybe I'm just making it worse. Let's see if I can use my trusty iPhone flashlight. Yeah, I'm on. This is camera work right here, folks. Well, you can probably make out some of the details in there. The main no, this flashlight doesn't. Okay. The main point is that it has actually a pretty nice and wild hamon. I'm really actually happy with it. It's kind of subtle, and I think there's not really like a big etch on it. A little lemon juice or something like that might bring it out. Sometimes they get dipped in like a ferro chloride or something like that to bring out the hamon, and I don't think that's been done in spades on this sword. It has actually it's got a big meaty sword, and it feels a little tip heavy, but with this little handle, it actually feels surprisingly comfortable and movable in the hand. It's not too bad. The other thing that I do notice about the sword though is that in the trip over here, there were a lot of little bits of saya rub. So there are portions on the sword, and I'll take better photos later. I have an oil right now, so you're not really able to see much, but there's portions of the sword that got smudged up a little bit in the polish from bouncing around in the saya on the trip over here from Poland. But still, I mean, this sword in Shirasaya, big katana to like 29-inch blade with Hibachi in Shirasaya that's perfectly functional to be reworked as the basis for a Suka core and saya. Was under $1,000 in polish. I mean, and this is a custom Prism Ik spent time doing just this one sword, making sure that it wasn't cracked and all messed up, and it feels like somebody thought about it when they made it. I mean, that's a pretty awesome deal. I don't know what I'm going to do with this in terms of finishing it, but I definitely am going to do that. Anyway, that is the Prism Ik blade that I have, and that's probably the most recent one that I picked up. I'm really happy with it. I think Prism Ik doesn't get a lot of credit for what he does, or maybe he does, but I don't know. It seems like his pieces linger on Swordform International for a really long time. Maybe the guy just doesn't advertise very well. Not entirely sure, but I've been happy with every one of the tantos and wakizashis and katanas that I've had by the guy. I think, for the work he does, the price that he charges is very reasonable. So if you have any interest, take a look on Swordform International, or maybe ping him there and, buy something. Anyway, that's pretty much all I have for you in terms of new acquisitions. There's probably been some thises or that's that have come and gone. I will have some updates and projects and reviews and things like that coming out later. I've also been getting some suggestions on what to do for videos. And the two topics that probably come up the most are, can you make a video on like your top 5 or top 10 swords that you recommend? And also, what's the best sword to buy, right? Like what should I buy, and what are your top 10? And I feel like those are, I can answer that question, but let me just maybe give a little bit of advice before you ask it. One, what you're cutting is important, right? And also, what are you going to be using it for? And are there any characteristics about the sword that you want? And so all of those things are really important when I'm answering that question. What sword should I buy? I need to know all of those things. And also, if I'm making a top 10 list, it's really tough for me to narrow it down, because even though I might specialize or really focus, I should say, not that I'm a specialist at anything, but I focus on Japanese style katanas. So if you ask me what sword should I buy, or what are your top 5, it depends on the situation and what I'm going for. Now, if you're thinking about just cutting to tatami mats, well then I really like the Hanwei Practical XL, right? For $200, I think that does a great job cutting tatami mats. It's at least in terms of like value for the dollar, I think it does a great job at $200. But it's not really great at least in my opinion, much else. It's a big, wide, heavy blade. I wouldn't want to do kata. I wouldn't want to do iaido with it. I wouldn't want to do any of those activities with it, but I wouldn't mind cutting tatami mats with it for a very long period of time. Then you have the, I want to use a shenkin, but I want to use it for iaido. And well, then that's a different story. Like the Hanwei Shinto is really nice. I like that one. I like lighter blades, maybe the Minatoshi Viper. But my main suggestion would be to get something that is really focuses on the mount. Since you're not going to be cutting anything and you're going to be swinging it around a lot and taking it in and out of the saya, something with a lot of focus on how the sword is mounted together is probably where my focus would go. Citadel does a great job, but they're $2,000, and it's tough for me to think of something that is value-based in that line of things. But light is good, and custom mounted or really refined in terms of how the sword feels as it comes in and goes out of the saya are kind of the important things that go into there. Light blades aren't terribly difficult to find, but swords that are refined feeling are they're usually reserved for the custom realm. Anyway, sometimes you can find a good deal on a used custom mounted sword. Then you have the kind of all-around stuff. Maybe you want to do trick cutting of water bottles, in which case like a lighter sword may be better, but it depends on your personal preference. And then you have swords that you want to use just for the zombie apocalypse, like what's going to just last forever, in which case, that's really tough for me to say. A through-hardened blade would probably be where I would go, because they tend to be a little bit more resilient. If you miss and whack into a metal post, it's much more likely to bend instead of break or chip, and you might not have access to sharpening stones. But that's a purely hypothetical scenario and I just had to tell my daughter the other day why the zombie apocalypse can't happen. There's like a myriad of reasons, like shopping carts and the Grand Canyon, and the fact that I live in a place where it's winter 10 months out of the year and people's bodies are made out of 80% water, and also that we have to release permits so that all of the animal species around us aren't completely extinct. Hunting permits, because everyone has guns. Anyway, the zombie apocalypse isn't necessarily a real scenario, but again, it depends so much on what you like, what you don't like, what feels good in your hand, what's portable, what's mobile. There's a lot of factors to consider. In terms of what's the most durable, it seems like a CMP V3 blade It seems to be about the hardest stuff out there that I've been able to see, but it's usually in larger blades. Anyway, the bottom line would be that I probably get something through hardened, like a Dojo Pro. You've seen me put those through hell. Since I've put so many of them through hell and they seem to take a licking and keep on ticking, I wouldn't mind doing one of those, but other similar through hardened blades, the Hanwei Raptor series or something akin to that. And then I suppose the last bit of types of cutting, if you're not doing, traditional tatami mat cutting or iaido or zombie apocalypse, is, kind of, I want to collect it, I want to look at it, I want to have it around, but I want it to be functional. In that case, do you want folded steel? Do you want a laminated construction like a traditional? There's folding of the steel, which gives you that kind of wood grain pattern, but then there's softer steel and harder steel, which is like a lamination technique that can be used to give you a really hard edge and then like a soft spine, and sometimes those steels are fused, which is different than the folding per se. And then you have like, do you want hand carved fittings? Do you care about that? Do you care about the polish? Do you care about what size, what weight, how long, what features it has, like a bohi, or maybe can't remember the name, but the like two bohis on it, or maybe an okasaki, or maybe a shobuzakuri type blade, or maybe something else. So all of those kind of factor in. If you don't care, then I guess it opens up the gates for a lot of different things. Then you have budget. Some people think that $50 is a lot of money. Some people think that $5,000 is nothing. So all of those things are going to factor in, and it's really difficult for me to answer what sword should you buy without a lot of that information. And also, what's my top 10? I love swords. I love all swords. Granted, I look at katanas a lot, but I like European swords and Filipino swords and all manner of swords. So it's tough for me to say my top 10. But if I had to, maybe I'll think of something as a way to put in some of my favorites. But those are the two just that I've gotten requests for, and know that I'm thinking about them, and that's kind of why I'm struggling, because I'm a big elitist jerk, and it's a broad question, and I can't wrap my mind around it in a simple way that adds to the conversation. Sure, I could be like, I like this sword, number 1, because reasons, but that just, I don't think that adds anything. You could see videos about people that assign, gradings, and I can't, it's tough for me to do that in a way that isn't subjective or completely arbitrary. If I'm going to make a video, I hope that it is helpful or adds something meaningful to this sword conversation we're having, and I haven't found a way to do that just yet. So anyway, that is all I have for you for this sword vlog. Thank you for listening to me ramble so long, and as always, cheers, and thanks for watching.